Welcome. My name is William David van Kollenburg, Solution Architect at RedSocks. During this video, I'm going to show you the installation, configuration, and use of the RedSocks Malware Threat Defender. In this image, you can see the setup as it's being used in this demonstration. On the top half of the image, you see the Malware Threat Defender. The Malware Threat Defender is equipped with 4 network interfaces. The first network interface that you see is the initial setup port, which always has the address 10.100.100.100. The second interface you see is the management interface. In other words, this is the interface that the GUI is propagated on. This interface requires an IP address within your management network. The third interface you see is the flow interface. This is the first built-in interface on the appliance. This flow interface also requires an IP address, but this IP address can be in a limited network. In other words, a network that has no connections to the internet whatsoever. The last port is not being used and is for RedSocks diagnostic use only. On the lower half of this image, we see a graphical representation of the probe. The first 4 interfaces on the probe appliance are Ethernet 2, 3, 4 and 5. It's very important to remember these numbers because you will need them for the configuration of the probe. These are the 4 so-called listener ports. They receive span data which will be converted to IPFix data within the probe appliance. The 2 built-in network cards, Ethernet 0 is not being used and Ethernet 1 is the so-called management interface and requires an IP address in the limited network where you also have the flow interface of the MTD. Keep in mind that this network does not need to be connected to the internet whatsoever. After either the physical or virtual setup, you can log in to the appliance using the initial config port. After logging in, when I click Settings and go to System Settings, Network, I can configure the needed IP addresses. The Internet Network Interface is the management interface. The Flow Data Network Interface, obviously, is the flow interface. At initial config, the Flow Data Network Interface will always have an IP address of 10.200.200.201 with a 24-bit subnet mask. The Internet Network Interface will always have a DHCP address. Once the Internet Network Interface and/or the Flow Data Network Interface have been configured to user specifications, these cannot be set back to DHCP. After configuring the system settings, also take a look at the following network settings: NTP for time server configuration, HTTP proxy for possible proxy authentication for outbound internet traffic. Next thing to do is to go to the detection settings. First, we take a look at the categories. Within this screen, we find all the main categories that RedSocks checks against. These are botnet controller, Tor networking, bad internet neighborhoods, mining pools, miscellaneous, cloud storage servers, file sharing tools, infected clients, instant messaging, public proxies, remote administration toolkits, sinkholes, and geofencing. Geofencing, next to the Enable or Disable button, also has the possibility to select certain countries. When countries are selected, they are colored red. You can deselect them either by using the checkbox or clicking on the country. Do not forget to save if you want to keep changes. Next are the heuristics. Within heuristics, we can check for long-lasting connections, outgoing ICMP ping, high connection count to same IP but different ports, periodic requests to ports, high connection count to same port but different IPs, periodic requests to IPs, high connection count to IP and port, and first UDP then TCP connections. In the upcoming months, these heuristics will be greatly enhanced and improved. Again, when you change these settings, do not forget to press the Save button to make sure these changes are persistent. The RedSocks Malware Threat Defender also allows us to import our own threat intel feeds. These feeds can be added by pressing Add Feed, giving it a name, adding the URL to the feed location, and indicate whether or not you should authenticate for this feed. Again, do not forget to press the Save button. Additionally, we can also configure trusted SMTP addresses and trusted DNS addresses. Keep in mind that these addresses are external resources that you trust, so only use them when either your DNS server or SMTP server is configured to use an outside smart host. After configuring the detection settings, we proceed to configure the alert settings. Within alert settings, we can configure our mail server. The mail server is being used for multiple purposes. First off, a mail server is required to create new users. A user, when created, will be sent an authentication code for first login. After logging in with this code, a user can create its own password. Another use for the email server is to send alerts. By default, it is set to send email for all threat levels. We strongly recommend you set this to threat level 1 only. In the email settings, we can create a from address, a startup or admin recipient, and a alert recipient. The from address obviously is something to represent the malware threat defender. The startup recipient or admin recipient is the person who receives informational email about the MTD. For instance, when it starts up or when there is a problem with the MTD. The alert recipient is the person who receives email about indicators of compromise. The RedSocks appliance can also be configured to communicate with your SIEM solution. It can do so by using syslog. Simply enable the syslog, give the IP address of your syslog server, give the syslog port and select the protocol. Again, when you change these settings, do not forget to press the Save button. Last but not least, you are also able to create aliases. Aliases are addresses based on IP version 4 or MAC address that are well known within your organization. You can, for instance, fill out the email address of your mail server over here and give it the alias mail server. In this manner, it's easily to see that a certain alert is about your mail server. Again, when you update these, press the Save button. When logging into the MTD and going to the system settings, the first thing you will see is the status screen. The status screen shows us the last boot time, the last threat intelligence update, the software version, and the serial number of the RedSocks Malware Threat Defender. The serial number is important for logging support requests. When calling the support department, please always keep your software version at hand. The last threat intelligence update should never be older than 1 hour and 5 minutes. The updates are pulled by the RedSocks Malware Threat Defender every hour. Because of randomization, there can be a 5-minute difference. The RedSocks Malware Threat Defender supports 4 different types of users. The first one and default one being the admin. The purpose of the admin user is to maintain the RedSocks Malware Threat Defender as a device, so setting IP addresses, mail server details, etc. We can add users by pressing the green button in the right top corner. Over here, we can see the different user types. The bottom one being the viewer. The viewer user is specifically designed for wallboard services. The security officer is the day-to-day user of the malware threat defender. The data protection officer is the user that can grant rights to security officers and can do historical searches. When logging into the appliance, the first page you will see is the dashboard. The dashboard gives you a quick overview of the current status. The dashboard is made up out of 4 sections. The first section, on the top left hand, gives you a menu where you can choose dashboard, alert history, and settings. On the right hand side, the second section gives you information about the amount of flows that have been analyzed and the timestamp. In the top hand corner, we have the possibility to edit our profile or to log out. The third section gives you the most recent alerts. Depending on your screen resolution, this will give a number of lines. In my case, the last 6 alerts from a total of 13,987 alerts. When I hover my mouse over the alerts, it gives me a number of options. When I click the button at the end of the line, it gives me the option to whitelist similar events, to view the related flow data. The statistics section gives me an overview of the amount of alerts, the top 10 destinations, and the top sources. We can also view this in a numerical version. In the numerical version, I can also set filters. Depending on what I select, the list of destinations and devices can change. By pressing the X at the beginning of this line, I can clear this filter. A more comprehensive view of the generated alerts can be found in the alert history. The alert history gives me an overview of the last 10,000 alerts. The alert history list is a static list, so you need to manually update this when new alerts have been found. Click on the Refresh to Show Changes link to refresh this page. In this overview, like in the dashboard, I can see the timestamp, the threat level, the category, the MAC address, if known, the brand name for the MAC address, the source IP address, the source port, the destination IP address, the destination port, the protocol at use, and a description of the alert detail. Like in the dashboard, also here at the end of each line, I have the possibility for extra actions, whitelist similar events, view related flow data, and look up destination at VirusTotal. This list can also be downloaded in a CSV format. The alert history screen also contains an advanced filter. I can create as many filter rules as I want. If, as per example, I would want to investigate all events related to the IP address 192.168.56.50, I would copy this address, go to the filter rules, set the first filter rule to the source IP address and equals to this IP address, press the apply button, and I will see all alerts related to this IP address. As you can see, in this overview, I have multiple different alerts. Now, if I would want to filter out all the connections to port 12544, because these are standardized within my company, I can create another rule by clicking the Add Rule button, stating the destination port, saying it should not be, and then paste the value. As you can see, this single filter rule gives me all the alerts relating to 192.168.56.50. You can see that I've got multiple different infections over here. If, for instance, I would only want to see the botnet infections, I would simply click Add Rule, select Alert Detail, and it would say Connect, for instance, botnet. And then apply the filter. As you can see, the remaining alerts now all have the word botnet in their alert detail. If I would be interested in a very specific destination IP address, I could again copy the IP address, add a rule, select destination IP address, and paste the address in the field. Simply apply the rule, and a new list will be generated. Also, these generated lists can be downloaded as a separate CSV. There is virtually no limit on how complex you can create a filter. If I want to go back, I can press the button Clear Filters, and the original list will be shown again, including the new alerts. If after investigation a certain event turns out to be standardized traffic for your company, we can whitelist this event to make sure that it never shows up in your console again. We can do so by pressing the button at the end of the line and select whitelist similar events. In this screen, a blank represents a wildcard. In other words, if it doesn't matter what is the source IP, I simply make it blank and this will become the wildcard. In this case, the source port also should be blanked because the source port is always selected by the endpoint. Do not forget to hit the Save button to make sure this whitelist event is being saved. In the same manner, we can also exclude systems from detection. If, for instance, you have a DMZ network where all traffic is free to go wherever it wants, I could put in a subnet. To do so, I would put in the address 192.168.0.0/24. This rule, as it is set up here after saving, represents the entire network 192.168.0.x. The checkmark at the beginning of the line is the enable or disable function. If a line has not been checked, that line currently is not active. You can also reach the whitelist settings. You can also reach the whitelist page by going to Settings, Detection Settings, Custom Whitelists. In the same manner, we can also create our own personal blacklist settings. The custom destination IP blacklist currently only works with IP addresses. To activate this, enable the checkmark, put in an IP address, include a subnet, /32 means only this single IP address, and give it a description. Do not forget to push the Save button. In both the custom IP blacklist and the whitelisting, the minus at the end of the line allows you to delete the rule. There's also a Notes button, which allows you to put in notes on why and who has created either the blacklist or the whitelist entry.